Okay. So we are going to do a de-escalation and HBS refresher. So I'm going to do the de-escalation part. And in the middle, we'll take a break. We'll watch some lovely videos that Brenna recorded that have all of our blocks and HBS procedures and that kind of thing. And then we'll have a little bit of time at the end to review all of that. Okay, can everyone see? It looks like it's loading. Can everyone see that? I'll take that as a yes, hopefully.
I can see it.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Okay. So first we're going to talk briefly about just what de-escalation is. So this is a process that we're going to learn to identify when our students or our clients are beginning to become agitated, and then we change our own behavior to aid them in returning to their optimal behavioral state. So instead of waiting for a full explosion to occur, when we see them make any step towards full escalation, we want to prompt some sort of reaction. That way we can move towards de-escalating. So this gives us kind of a visual of the different phases of escalation for our kids. So there's 7 different phases here: calm, trigger, agitation, acceleration, peak, de-escalation, and recovery. So while we're going to talk about de-escalation, there's kind of this whole progression of behavior that we need to discuss so that we can identify what to do and when. So our first phase is our calm phase. This is kind of our optimal state for all of our clients, where they're relaxed, they're cooperative. And during this time, we are trying to maintain a productive environment. And we're also going to build rapport. So we want to pair ourselves with reinforcement. We want to use these opportunities for teaching and being productive. What are we working on with the kids? We're working on skill acquisition. We're working on functional communication training. We're using naturalistic teaching. We might be getting assessments done or evaluations. And during this time, we want to use antecedent interventions. So when we're using behavior momentum or high probability requests as an antecedent intervention, that means that we are just trying to promote compliance, including tasks that are easy to be completed. So, we're not going to, when we're trying to have a productive environment, we're not just going to face our clients with the most difficult tasks immediately. We need to build up some momentum to make sure that they're kind of ready to respond to what we have to do. We also want to provide non-contingent reinforcement. So we're going to be providing attention, providing access to things, providing escape from non-preferred activities intermittently, so that it just maintains that positive rapport. And the client is receiving reinforcement for doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then we also have to make sure, while our clients are calm, that we still maintain using all of the supports that we have for them. So oftentimes we'll see the environment kind of fall apart for some clients because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And so we stop using all of our supports. Whereas using those visuals and timers and kind of maintaining that antecedent intervention environment is really important to make sure they can stay in this calm state. Next, we have the trigger. So it's important to identify what are some common triggers for our clients. Sorry, I'm seeing that there's a chat about clicking. If that's annoying to people, I can change my headset. It might be something with my headphones. So our triggers for our clients, some of the common things you might see are like basic demands. But if you think about your client in specific, just brainstorm, shoot them in the chat about some common triggers, things that frequently kind of lead to problem behavior for your kids. Then our antecedent interventions that we want to use during this time are continuing to build predictability in the environment. So we need to maintain our visuals, our timers, our common routines, our verbal warnings, so that we aren't just throwing something at our clients that are going to trigger them and they don't know what's coming. Then those consequential interventions that we're going to implement when we do have the triggers, we start to see a little bit of challenging behavior, is we want to redirect the individual's behavior to complete whatever our tasks are. So we might use our behavior momentum in this in this situation to present some high probability tasks and kind of direct it into whatever it is that we're trying to get them to do. We also want to catch them being good and promote, the positive behaviors that they are doing. Oh, thanks so much for answering that question. Great job working on this with me. We may want to remove the trigger if that's possible and appropriate. There's times where it's not going to be possible to remove triggers. We're not just going to totally remove all demands all the time. But if there are things, like I know someone said, noise in the environment might be something that is triggering. If there's non-preferred items at a table that you don't actually need for that task, we don't really have to have those around if a client is expressing that that is triggering them. And then we also want to model replacement skills for them, and it can be relatively open-ended here. So we want to provide opportunities to use functional communication. You might say things like, is there something I can help you with? We're going to provide choices like, where do you want to sit? Which thing are we going to do first? And still allowing them to feel like they have control and predictability in their environment. So what are precursor behaviors? This is where you get some sort of indication that we have something that's triggering in the environment. So a precursor behavior is any response by a student, a client, that tend to occur immediately prior to more severe and more challenging behaviors. Oftentimes, we're going to see these following demands, the presentation of non-preferred tasks or items. And when we see these precursor behaviors, that's when we know it's time for us to implement some de-escalation strategies. So again, we can put it in the chat so I'm not taking too much time and we can get to lunch when we need to. But think about what are some common precursor behaviors of your current clients. So it might be, yelling. It might be negative vocalizations. There's a lot of times when that's kind of your indication that something's probably about to get a little bit more severe. I have one client who mom let us know that when we start hearing the F word, we know that that client is very escalated and quickly approaching more severe, challenging behavior, even though that negative vocalization in itself isn't as severe as, aggression, self-injury, or anything like that. And then think about when you typically see precursor behaviors for your clients. It might be when you say it's time to log on for class. It might be when you change the schedule. It might be denying access to a preferred item. So there's all sorts of different things. And it's very individualized by client about what are their precursor behaviors and when do you typically see them occur. So our third kind of step in all the phases of de-escalation is our kind of agitation state. So during this phase, our clients are increasingly unfocused, upset, escalated, and they might start to exhibit escape or avoidance behaviors for whatever that trigger is. Our antecedent interventions during this time is we have to make sure we're manipulating the environment. So when you see that your client is starting to become agitated, unfocused, we need to immediately look around and see what's going on in the environment that I can manipulate to make sure we maintain a safe environment. So if you have a client who typically engages in property destruction as they get more escalated, we want to manipulate the environment by removing any materials that are right near them that might be thrown, they might be hit.
Shelby, excuse me.
Hey, Shelby. Oh,
Yeah, I just saw the chat.
Something has happened with your audio.
Yeah, I've been having excessive computer issues recently. I'm going to turn my video off. Is that a little bit better?
It is not.
Give me 1 second.
You bet. It's an interesting vocal effect, though. It definitely she is in
she's in
robot
robot
mode.
mode. That's all. It's fine.
I was going to say I had a meeting with her yesterday, and man, she sounds different today.
I thought it was part of the training to talk about things that might escalate us.
I think we should go with that and make it part of the training.
It might be a trigger for some people.
All right, is anything a little
Much
bit
better.
Okay, I changed my headset so you don't have static, and I texted my boyfriend asking him to minimize Wi-Fi usage. So
You sound like you again.
hopefully, hopefully it's better. We will try this again. Okay, so I'm going to pick up on agitation. So during this time, our clients are becoming increasingly unfocused, upset, escalated, etc. They might be exhibiting escape or avoidance behaviors related to those triggers. And then during this time, our antecedent interventions that we're going to use in particular are manipulating the environment. So if you have a client who typically engages in property destruction, you might think about removing materials that might be thrown or otherwise damaged, could cause harm to someone. We need to think about maintaining a safe environment by making sure kids just can't even access anything in the first place that might lead to a more dangerous environment. Then, as far as some of our consequential interventions, we want to help label observable behaviors and offer replacement skills. So we might say things like, I can see you might be frustrated. We could go on a walk or you could take a break. We're still kind of giving them some choices that they feel in control of what's going on. And we also don't want to just tell them, okay, you're mad, let's do this. We want to say, I see that your forehead's all scrunched up. How are you feeling? Or I can hear your voice getting louder. What is it you want to say to me? And we want to use behavior momentum in this instance more to promote the use of coping skills. So we're not necessarily looking for immediate compliance with redirecting back to the task. We want to make sure we're helping prompt them to implement coping skills. So you might use some really high probability requests like touch your head, touch your nose, clap your hands, what's your name? But to really fade more into, okay, let's take some deep breaths. Let's count down from 5. Let's go for a walk and make sure that we're really promoting jumping in with whatever their coping skills are that are in their repertoire. So some of our signs of agitation are we might have some externalized behaviors. So you might see increased self-stimulation, repetitive, that's supposed to be self-talk, low-level destructive behaviors, trying to grab things in the immediate environment, crumpling visuals. Kids might pace or kind of wander around, or just general changes in body language. Then some of our more kind of internalized behaviors, you might have kids who seem like they're zoning out, staring into space. They're withholding speech, if they're a vocal client and they just stop talking to you, withdrawing from the current activity or seeking isolation. So our next phase, if we kind of don't intervene on that agitation, is acceleration. And we know that this can happen quickly. Kids will escalate, or clients will escalate from those kind of low level behaviors to more severe behaviors if we don't provide any sort of intervention. So our antecedent interventions as our clients are accelerating are we want to make sure we're removing vulnerable peers or other individuals to a safer area. This isn't necessarily, clearing the room just because our client is becoming escalated. But, if there's a peer who typically sits right next to your client and you can see that they're feeling really agitated, maybe we're going to move that peer to a different area and say, hey, why don't you go check on this friend, see how they're doing? And then we want to be providing reinforcement for our appropriate and incompatible behaviors. So, you're trying to prompt some coping skills, but your client's just been yelling the whole time. If they kind of go quiet and they take a big deep breath, oh, that was great. Thanks so much for, using your quiet voice. And then our consequential interventions we're going to use during this time is continuing to label our observable behaviors and direct our replacement skills. But here it might be a little bit more directed. So instead of, you can take a walk or get some water, how can I help you? It might be a little more specific now, like let's count down from 10 and then we'll try again. And we're going to continue using our behavior momentum strategies to make sure we really have compliance and can work on prompting some other incompatible behaviors with whatever those challenging behaviors are. Next, we have our peak, point of the behavioral state of the escalation phase. So during this time, our clients may be exhibiting more severe behaviors of concern. So during this time, we're going to focus on maintaining a safe environment for yourself, for the individual in crisis, and for any observers. And so this is where, once we finish this slide, we're going to talk about our HBS strategies as far as kind of keeping ourselves safe and as far as keeping other people safe. But during this time, our consequential interventions are going to include removing an audience if possible. We want to call for help. That might be walking for behavior support. That might be calling 911 if necessary. We're going to implement any crisis strategies or a crisis plan that your client has in place as far as who to call, what is the hierarchy you go through as far as your safety procedures. During this time, we're not ever going to threaten. We're not going to talk about the consequences of not complying, of not calming down. We want to continue modeling appropriate replacement behaviors calmly and neutrally. And sometimes it really is just going to be waiting it out. When I went through another safety training for the old agency I worked for, and the guy referenced wait as standing for why am I talking? If whatever you're trying to do is just further escalating, sometimes we just have to wait it out and just make sure we're maintaining safety for everyone involved. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point, and Brenna is going to jump in with all of her videos, and then we'll come back to our next steps of this presentation.
Hello, everyone. I am Brenna. I'm going to just kind of review the HBS strategies with you guys. I did make some lovely videos for you. So first, I want to talk about ways to escape if a kiddo or someone has a hold of your hair. So what you would do is, like, I'm practicing on my shirt. So say that like they're holding on to you. You can also do this like if they're grabbing onto your clothes. I would just put my hand on theirs first, kind of smush it down with my hand, and then slowly try to peel back their fingers. And also, sometimes, that they get two hands in your hair. Sometimes the easiest thing to do is just hold their hands to your head so they're not like ripping your hair. And I usually just call for help. They have a good grasp. So again, yeah, you have it on your hair, kind of push their hand down, and then slowly peel back their fingers. Try to release the hair. Another way of escape is for bites. So say a kiddo has a bite of your arm. One way to kind of help release that is what we call feeding. So I'm gonna like kind of push my arm slightly like into the bite with the hopes they like will release. If a kid has like a really good lock on you or they have a bite on biting on your leg and it's not really possible for you to feed into it, what we do is a key. You take your finger like this, go like right here above the jaw and kind of twist like that for them to release the jaw. But be aware this will most likely leave a bruise on the kiddo when you do this. So it's just something to be aware of. Okay, so some of the first videos I made are for blocking punches. So those will be the first ones. Let me share my screen. Okay, first video. Did you guys hear that? Okay. With my lovely assistant, Alyssa. We are going to be doing how to block punches. All right, the first one is called the telephone. Got my phone right here. Go down like that. All right, so she punches me. Okay, punch me with your left arm, like that. All right, next block to block punches is just use your arm right here and kind of push it away like that. Okay, punch me like that. And then with the left. All right, another type of block you could do for punching. Air claw. That's the thing. Just kind of pushing away the punch. I think the next couple ones are escape from chokes. All right, the next one we're going to be going over is escapes from being choked. So the first one is if the kiddo or whoever is coming towards you and trying to choke you from the front. Okay, what you're going to do is take your arm, call it the airplane. You're just going to go through their arms and then push with your body. All right, got that? Got my arm. I'm going to go through her arms and not like that. I don't know if they could see that. Let me try this way. There you go. Okay. Another choke. All right, the next type of choke is if they're coming from behind you. And again, with two hands, if they're trying to choke you from behind. What we're going to do is I'm going to grab her hands, lift up my shoulders, bring her hands up, kind of scooch out. Okay. So her hands are trying to choke me, grab them, like so. And another type of choke is if they're using one arm and it's like around my neck. What we're going to do for that is I'm going to just lift up her elbow and try to move out from under it. Okay. Her arms around me. I'm going to put my hand here. Remember your spoons. Other hand by her elbow. I'm going to lift it up over my head and out like that. So Alyssa was being very gentle with me, but normally that would probably be very difficult and kind of hurt to get out from that one. So expect like your ear to get like hurt and like your glasses to fall off. So I can't remember what's in this one. Maybe if a kid's holding on to you, how to escape from just being held on to really tightly. We'll just find out together. All right, another type of escape. So if a kiddo grabs my wrist with their hand, it's on the same side. What I'm going to do is just swing my arm, and because it's going to be where their hand is the weakest. So this, out, swing. Same thing for this side. Out, swing. Try a little harder. So then another way is if, same thing, if they have one hand, but it's like across our bodies, what I'm gonna do is do like a key and then move my hand up, okay? Like that. Same thing on this side, turn it up. I'm missing one. I don't know what happened to it. Did I delete it by accident? Okay. There's also another video. So I'll just try to demonstrate as best I can by myself. So it's where if a kid, like if you're up trying to reach for something, and they grab a hold of your hand with both of their hands. What I would do is I would grab my hand and just like pull it down. And then if they're like, if I'm on their desk and I'm trying to like take the iPad and they grab my wrist with their hands, kind of same thing. I take my arm on my own hand and then just try to lift it up as fast as I can. That makes sense. I don't know what happened to the video. I apologize. So yeah, those are some HBS strategies.
Awesome. So one other thing I want to just add to about everything with like escapes is it's really important to, once you've escaped from something, make sure that you get out of the way, right? So obviously Brenna was still close to Alyssa because they're taking videos, but once you escape from something, you don't want to set yourself up to be grabbed again. So as soon as you escape, you're creating some distance, and then you kind of get whatever support you need to, jump in to try to de-escalate. So
also, I just wanted to add real fast that it also is helpful to make sure that you're not wearing like, big hoop earrings to work, or like scarves or hoodies. Those are can be grabbed. So just be aware of that.
absolutely. Yes, and good point, whoever said that, about sometimes certain things are not going to necessarily be appropriate, right? We're working with the best that we have. But when you have a really, let's say you have an 18-year-old large male client, we're going to probably need more help than you being able to escape a choke by yourself. And then if you have, clients who have some additional conditions like having brittle bones or anything like that, there's times where some of these are absolutely not appropriate. So you're definitely going to go based on the client's plan, and work with whoever your consultant is and different supervisors to make sure you know what is and is not appropriate to use with each of your clients. Good point. Okay, I am going to start sharing my screen again. And let's see. Okay, I'm gonna make sure my video is off too to hopefully save too much Wi-Fi bandwidth. Okay, so once we have, used our HBS strategies, we have escaped whatever we need to escape, and we are working on de-escalating, we have our next phase. So while clients are in their peak behavioral state of escalation, we are still trying to use our strategies like, behavioral momentum, like coping skills, etc., if it is appropriate for the client. If we're just waiting out, we're just waiting out sometimes. But as we are working now on this phase 6 of de-escalation, we want to make sure that we are, one, maintaining a supervised space for clients. So, once we are escaped, or, maybe they were released from a hold because they are engaging in such significant, challenging behavior, we don't just let it go and now they're done. Instead, we need to provide a neutral, independent work environment so that they can help regain focus and compliance, we're going to give easy tasks to complete. This may be with or without materials, based on what is kind of preferred for them, what is safe for them. And the antecedent interventions that we're going to use during this time are providing reinforcement for appropriate behaviors. That might be sitting in the chair, having calm hands, etc. One thing, which we'll talk about at the very end, but that I noted here, is that we're providing reinforcement. We're not necessarily just providing praise. So sometimes the reinforcement for your kid is going to be the absence of you talking because they're frustrated and they don't want to hear what you have to say right now. We want to make sure we're still keeping the environment clear, and paying attention to the peers that are in the area, any other observers. That way we know if we need to, restart this whole phase all over again. And then we have our consequential interventions, kind of as we're working through de-escalation, of continuing to model appropriate replacement behaviors, relaxation techniques. And then we want to make sure that they are demonstrating compliance before proceeding to the original task. So maybe we have something major happen at the beginning of the school day, and it might be the end of the school day before we're able to get to the original task. We can't really try to expect our clients to de-escalate on their own. And we can wait, pretty much all day if we have to. So then we have our recovery. And during this time, we want to help our clients return to their usual activities and get back to that calm, optimal kind of phase one. So during our, with our antecedent interventions, we want to acknowledge their cooperative and appropriate behaviors. And then we also want to make sure we are encouraging and supporting them in changing the behaviors of concern. So maybe we are practicing their calming strategies. We are reviewing their visual schedule with them. We are allowing them to communicate with us and express their needs. But we also want to make sure we're not eliminating the original request entirely, because if we entirely remove that request, then that behavior of concern would be reinforced. But there may be instances where you're going to modify the task to make it more acceptable. You're going to break it into smaller pieces. You're going to provide them with help rather than doing it independently, because we don't want to, while they're trying to recover, we don't want to have to go right through this exact same, crisis situation. And then we want to continue using behavior momentum to re-engage the client in tasks. So use high probability requests to make sure that we have compliance before, trying to redirect into whatever our original more difficult task may have been. So some additional considerations just to keep in mind, throughout all of our services are, we have to make sure we are always aware of what is going on in the environment. We want to make sure we're always facing our clients. It can be really easy when we're in a busy classroom setting to have to go grab something, or you're at the home setting and you need to find some materials that you don't know where on earth they could have gone. But we need to know where our clients are at all times, so that we, that trigger might not be something that we present. It might not be necessarily that observable to us. So we need to be ready to go through this entire process at any time. We also want to always have control of the materials in the environment. It can be difficult, especially when we're in the home setting. There's stuff everywhere, but we need to know where are items of concern. We need to know, is there something that might get thrown at any time? Is there something that's dangerous in here? Are there materials that if they get a hold of, they might just be triggered or further escalated? And then we always have to be ready to move, just like Brenna talked about, coming prepared to work. We want to make sure we're wearing appropriate shoes and clothes and just have our, our entire being ready to get up and move and do whatever we need to do at any time. And then, as I alluded to earlier, for praise, we need to really make sure, is praising appropriate behaviors actually reinforcing, or does that tend to escalate them further? Some people eat up praise and will live for you to tell them they're doing a good job. But sometimes when we have kids who are in the acceleration, peak, and even recovery phases, providing praise and attention to them may actually make our situation worse. And instead, we just need to be quiet and let them, kind of return to that state with just our modeling appropriate behaviors, making sure we're not just talking their ear off just because it feels good for us to do that. So with that being said, are there any questions that people have? Chelsea said, don't allow yourself to get pinned into a corner against a wall. Definitely important as far as being aware of your environment. We should never be in a situation where you are not able to escape. Absolutely. Yes, remaining calm. Cool. Anyone else? Questions, comments, concerns? Yes,
just-
Alyssa, the PowerPoint is in the schedule. There's also a little handout that's like kind of a good example of just general behaviors that I'll make sure is uploaded if it's not already, but just an example of kind of using different language and different strategies during each of those phases. All right, awesome. Well,
Emily, did you have a question?
It wasn't more so a question, more of a statement. Also, don't be afraid to ask for a break. If you feel yourself getting agitated, escalated, it is the most important thing that you can do for yourself and your child, more importantly, to take a break and to step out. There is nothing wrong with it. I know that a lot of times people will sit there and be like, hey, you really, need to finish, see the end to this behavior. It's okay to step out. You are human. And that kid just bit the crap out of you or punched you in the face. It's okay to say, I need a second, and to step out and to have somebody take over.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think in this, in a school or center-based setting, it's easier to sometimes access that help, but there's times where, in the home setting, it might feel really isolating. If it has to be the client's parent, that's fine. We typically, there's a reason why we require caregivers for our kids that have behaviors of concern. So if you need to walk out of the room for a minute and you just need mom or dad or grandma or whoever to supervise, because that's the break you need to go take a walk, to go to the bathroom, that is absolutely fine, because you're there for another few hours with that kid and you have to get to your calm state so that you can provide good services for that client.
I know it's lunchtime, but can I add one more thing? Sorry, guys. Of course, I'm that person. So this is just something that happened to me when I was a BT. It happened a couple of years ago. I had a kid threaten to stab me with a pencil, and I remained neutral, didn't react, just pretended like he didn't even tell me, just because I knew this client engaged in a lot of attention-seeking behaviors. And so I just remained neutral, and the client specifically said afterwards, "Oh, you don't care." And I just moved on with their programming, pretending like nothing happened, and I didn't get stabbed. So that's another important thing when it comes to remaining neutral. That kid might just be playing you. They might actually hit you. Trust me, we've probably all been there. They might bite you. We've all been there. But it's also possible they might just be like making you flinch. So it's super, super important to remain neutral no matter what. So that's all I have, because that's huge.
Jared said, and I didn't get stabbed. Inspirational.
I did it. My hands are good. He was trying to get my hands. I'm good.
I love that. All right, awesome. Well, then we will let everyone go so you can still get our lunch break in. And this stuff will be uploaded, and let us know if you have any questions or anything like that. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Shelby.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Shelby.
Shelby and Brenna. Thank you.
Brenna, hey guys,
Thanks, Brenna.
before you all run off, can the managers please still stay on? Everybody else, go have your managers. I need you for about 90 seconds.